Edison format. I took part in an event at Brotherhood Games. They had a nice venue for us to chill out in. Really cool event. Um, I came in ninth place with this particular build, missing out with missing out on Top Cut because of tiebreakers, I believe. So yeah, it's a Swiss event. No playoff at top 8, so it's just a standard locals event. Just turn up, rock up with the deck you want, and yeah, I saw quite a few people from the disciples there. But yeah, anyway, without further ado, I'm going to get into deck list and give a quick, yeah, very brief discussion on just Blackwings in general. So, without further ado, so three Sirocco, yeah, standard. Your biggest, well, it's not the biggest, but it's the biggest one that you can normal summon when you don't control a monster. Is normal summon Cyber Dragon. Yeah, it's probably the most consistent one. No, not the most consistent one, but the one that yeah is a tribute monster technically speaking, but you're able to summon it when your opponent controls a monster. Then you've got 3 Shower. Yep, pretty much a staple as well. So yeah, special summon. I'll come to targets later, but you can special summon Blackwing with 1500 or less attack with effects negated. So one application does turn up when I cover the targets. 1800. So it does struggle with a lot of monsters because of Hamster. There's quite a few matchups where it's not so good in, but it's still a respectable body, and your opponent has to respect that you've got Kalute in your hand to possibly get your +1. Triple 3 copies of Bora. So if you just quick overview, if you control a Blackwing monster that's not named Bora the Spear, special summon it. You can special summon it from your hand. It does piercing damage or if we're going by the old terminology, if this monster has a high attack than a defense position monster where it attacks, it inflicts the damage as battle damage. Difference is battle damage. Yeah. A bit more discussion on this card when I get to a proper discussion. Still very important Blackwing, even though it's 1700. It's not the strongest, but it does have quite a few applications. Normally, you can use it to bait out your opponent's back rows because, yeah, it's still big enough to bait out the back rows, and that obviously gives if your opponent's forced to respond to this, obviously your Show is going to resolve, your Sirocco is going to resolve, all your other Blackwings are going to resolve properly. So, and the piercing damage does come up in some matches, especially the quick draw matchup. But I'll get to a proper discussion close to the time. 3 Kalute. Yeah, this is one of the reasons you play the deck. Just having people have to respect that this is the hand, but there are times where you normal summon it just to get the Whirlwind Search. It does come up quite a bit where you normal summon it, especially post siding. If you draw this with Whirlwind and Deck Devastation Virus, obviously that gets you a target. To make your deck very live. Yeah, 1400 boost is the other good thing about the boost is that the boost is very 1400, so it's not reliant on the monster. So you can always attack with the monster, push for game, and then the attack boost actually lasts until the end phase. So there's some applications where you can actually use one of your Blackwing monsters as deck devastation virus target when you use a Kalute. And possibly the most controversial of the multiples, I'm only running 2 Blizzard. So the reason I only run 2 Blizzard is because I never want to draw it in my opening hand. So in fact, yeah, just as a figure that I'm throwing out there, 39% chance of opening a card you run 3 copies of, and 28% chance of opening a card that you open 2 copies of. Provided you're running 40-card deck, which this is, and you open 6 cards in your opening hand, which is the case for a lot of these older formats because a lot of them are before Master Rule 3 when, well, what OCG calls Master Rule 3, but basically Introduction Pendulums made it so that you don't draw for your opening turn. But yeah, this is a card you never want to open. You never want to open it. You don't really want to use it with anything else. You rather, I think that 2 is the right number. If you resolve 1, it's a really good spot, and you need a second one for backup. But I think that if you're resolving more than 2 copies, I think you're not in a very good spot in the first place. Yeah, I think you only need to resolve 2 copies. If you resolve the second copy is normally there in case your first copy doesn't actually go off properly. Or you could end up like me in one of my matchups and just open with this in 2 copies of opening hand, which happens 2% of the time. But anyway, that's an aside. You never, like I say, you never want to open 3 of it. It's obviously better in the later game when you want to get back your monsters. But I personally think that the level 6 options aren't fantastic in the first place. Yeah, you never need to resolve a second copy. You just search off Whirlwind as and when you need to. For the one-offs, obviously the Gale, obviously very strong for its time. Basically means that anything with 26, this trades with a 2600 monster, and anything less than 2600 this runs over, and then you've also got you can always combine it. It's also got the same effect as Blower if you control another Blackwing monster, special summon it. So it does come up where you summon this with Sirocco, going to level 8, or you combine it with the level 4 and choose your appropriate level 7. And single value. So this is a Shura target. So if you special summon, although it's got the effect that whilst it's face up on the field, it can't be used as single material, Shura negates that particular effect, and obviously you banish it and another Blackwing monster, special summon a monster from your extra deck whose level is equal to the total of the banished monsters. So a lot of the time you're going into Armed Wing, but there is a combo where you can go into the level 8, Silverwind the Ascendant, but I'll explain that when I get to the card. Basically, you need, although it does require Shura and Gale to be able to go into that combo. Yeah, you never want to draw. Oh, so this is also a card you never want to draw multiple copies of. Just drawing the 1 is bad enough 15% of the time. It happened quite a lot for me, but anyway, it is what it is. Yeah, you just there, and then normally you summon this off Shura. Summon magical androids a lot of the time. Just get 600 boosts, because 600 boosts is always handy in the matchups where where they run mostly non-dark monsters. You use this and the Shura to go into Catasta. And for the final one-off, Dark Arm Dragon. Yeah, never actually summoned it when I was in the winning position. Every time I summoned it, it was when I was losing anyway. Well, I was in a really bad spot. I just flopped this. The 2 games I flopped it as a desperation. I ended up winning the game. The third one, I was running low on cards anyway. Yeah, and just had the Book of Moon to run over the Dark Armed and basically attack for game with Fire Dog, because I didn't have anything to stop the attack. But yeah, obviously really strong card. Definition of a boss monster. It's probably the boss monster if you're playing in a lot of these older formats. It's the card that defined what a boss monster is nowadays. So that's it for the monster lineup. That's 17 monsters in total. Spell lineup, double Whirlwind, obviously very strong. Makes your Blackwings the Blackwings gadgets. So every time you normal summon the Blackwing, when you normal summon Blackwing, you can search your deck for a monster whose attack is less than the normal summoned monster. Yeah, 28%, as I touched on earlier, the figures is 28% chance to open just Whirlwind, 2% chance of opening double Whirlwind, 1.9 if you're being pedantic. But yeah, this is what gives the deck the grind game. Yeah, it's obviously a very good card. It eventually got limited to 1. Yeah, nothing more to say about this particular card. Very strong card. Basically makes the deck tick along. Triple Book of Moon. I run Triple Book. I think it's a really solid card. Obviously you need to control face-up tuner monsters to be able to use them for a synchro monster, and then a lot of the time monsters are small enough for you to run over them with Shura Obora. Yeah, just apply the pressure that way. Maybe 3 might be too much in this particular meta, but it's always handy to go book a material, leave the book whatever you think is the right thing to book. So you book a tuner, leave the non-tuner stranded, or you book the non-tuner and run it over. Yeah, just a very good. I think it's a very solid defensive card for a lot of matchups, and if it's not good against the matchups you face, you can always side them out. So it's not too bad in that respect. Allure of Darkness. I consider this the graceful charity of Edison format. You're never really firing this off unless you've got something that you want to banish multiple copies of, or Dark Arm Dragon if it's dead in the early game. Yeah, just a solid draw. I mean, I've considered not running this at all, but I think that the chances of you just treat it like, just hold on to it until you really need to dig into your cards. So, for the back row hate, I run the standard Heavy Storm MST. So, that's Brain Control MST. That's standard. The not so standard card is Giant Trinade. So, I don't know if this is actually good in the long run, but I got quite fed up of players going. I think this is probably a dueling book thing where everyone seemed to open every single game that I've faced in one of the tournaments I've played in. They always seem to open some combination of Trapdoor Shoot, Solemn Judgment, and Starlight Road. And they're not running a 40 card deck, or people just not siding properly against me. But I think that maybe you could drop this for third Blizzard, maybe, but I just like the idea that your opponent sets multiple back rows, you Giant Trinade them away, you summon your Blackwing, you get advantage of that, you set the Icarus attack. If they start to set back row, then you Icarus attack the back row. They obviously can't use Starlight Road until they set the Starlight Road. So basically the only card that it really baits out are some Judgment, which you're more than happy to take because you can always go Burst Potential, or it baits out Dark Bribe, which gives you another card to draw, so it's not so bad. Yeah, maybe obviously it's terrible in quite a lot of matchups. So yeah, just see how this goes. And the last single one-off is the Brain Control. Brain Control for game. Steal a monster. Use it for synchro material. Attack for game. Yeah, just nothing. I think. Yeah, people, when I was playing in the format, when I was playing a lot back in the day, people say, oh, run Brain Control because you steal monster, attack for game. Yeah, that's why it had to get errated to what it is now, where it's limited to just monsters that can be normal summons or set. But yeah, just strong card all around. So I believe that is, if I do a quick count on my spell count, that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10. That's 10. So that leaves me with 13 traps because I run 40 card deck. So here's another reason to run the deck: triple Icarus attack. Yeah, I think I didn't play with Icarus attack that well in this tournament. That's probably why I missed out on top 8, which would have got me some packs. So yeah, another reason to run pure Blackwings is this. I never got. Most of the time, it just I think I only saw it. Yeah, most of the time we just traded to. If you can get it 3 for 2, fantastic, because you're obviously wanting to hold on to it. But just even just using it, clear the back rows, because people still decide to. It punishes the players that don't respect this card. For the players that do respect the card, obviously it's not so good, or up against frogs, or decks that don't really run too many back row cards. Yeah, it's not so good in those matchups. It's only good to hit monsters in that case. But yeah, just a card that is one of the reasons you're playing pure Blackwings, as well as running Whirlwind. Double Oppression. So one aspect of that makes Blackwings a very strong deck is its resilience to floodgates in general. So yeah, oppression. It doesn't. The only things that it stops you from doing is making burst plays, but this really helps you in your control game. So I feel that people misunderstand Blackwings as a deck and put all the eggs in one basket and say, oh, it's an aggro deck. But the way I play the deck is quite a lot different, which I think I can explain later in the discussion. Yeah, this is obviously probably it's the best floodgate of the format, of semi-limited, so thank goodness for that. But yeah, just yeah, obviously stop your opponent's special summoning. You've got bigger monsters in general. Yeah, and yeah, it's just, and sure, it gets under oppression because oppression doesn't negate activation of effect. It doesn't negate the activation, negate the activation of an effect that would special summon. So you can't use this in damage step. But yeah, in heaven, so anything that does not start a chain like Cyber Dragon, yeah, that's fair play. But yeah, best floodgate. Double bottomless. I think this is a carryover from historic, but still worth it. So obviously there's quite a few matchups you side this out because it's not very good to keep them in. So things like frog monarchs, anything with frogs in it, because most of the time when you use bottomless on those monsters, they've already floated. Monarchs already float when yeah, and just against the decks where they don't have a lot of big monsters, obviously you side this out. But yeah, other than that, I think it's still solid card. And for more standard trap cards, Mill Force, Trap Dust Shoot, obviously very broken. Some Judgment, yeah, probably the three best single one-off trap cards. And to run a trap lineup, I have a little bit of an unconventional twist. I run Double Dust Tornado and Torrential Tribute. So quick overview. Dust Tornado, I like this card a lot. It punishes the better players that play against you because they're not going to commit multiple cards to their back row unless they have something to back up all those back row, like a Solemn Judgment or Starlight Road. So you set the Dust Tornado and you basically punish them. It's either set multiple cards, lose them to Icarus attack, or set one, lose it to Dust Tornado MST. Yeah, obviously it's not so good in some matchups, so you side that against them. In fact, it actually came up where this was not so good because I faced a combo deck. Yeah, just solid card, ironically against me. And the not so standard card is Torrential Tribute. Everyone says, oh, you shouldn't run it. You are going to have a field all the time. Along those lines, you never want this when you have an established board. But for me, there's a few things. For me, in my eyes, it's still a really important card. There's actually a lot of games where I went into it. I open up my hand and it's not a hand that I want to commit to, so I just go past turn, or set this past turn. It actually came up where having this in hand actually forced my opponent to play around it. Yes, it gets played around, but as you should. Like, it's another mass backward. It's another board wipe. Players are already going to be playing around the Icarus attack, but just having this, you're not always going to have your big Blackwing monster. You're not always going to draw your Sirocco, Shura, Bora. So this card is, I think that Torrential actually is a lot better than people give it credit for. In my eyes, it's basically fourth Icarus attack in the matchups where you're not having any back row, because your monster wasn't going to survive anyway, so you might as well play Torrential. And obviously there was actually one hand where I drew double Blizzard, Gale, no other Blackwing monsters. So yeah, that sort of hand, I want Torrential there. So yeah, you never draw perfect. Just because you're playing on Dueling Book doesn't mean that it's realistic to always draw perfect. So yeah, that's a little bit of a snide at Dueling Book, but it is what it is. Anyway, so that's the 40 card deck. Main deck, the sideboard. I think it's pretty standard. Double Cyber Dragon. Actually, not a card that I side in a lot. it's normally reserved for machine decks, because against the other aggro decks, probably the other aggro deck you want it in against is Flame Veil, because summon this one over Gravekeeper Spy is pretty good. Then they have to summon out another Gravekeeper Spy, and we can't go into Descendant unless they've got another spy in hand. Don't mind me whilst I'm cleaning up the dust that I noticed on the cards. So yep. Rarely, I don't think it's a card that the only time I cited it in, I never saw it, but it's still valid because Committed Fortress Dragon is. This is basically Cyber Dragon is obviously a board wipe against machine decks, and it gets you a big beat stick. But yeah, just still a solid card, just not a card that I saw today. DD Crow, yeah, standard. Allure target, dark target, solid all-round card. A lot of decks are graveyard dependent nowadays, so yep. It is also pretty good against the decks that use Miracle Fusion if you catch them out, because sometimes they just go Miracle Fusion when they've only got one of the valid target. You DD Crow their water on their only hero, and Miracle Fusion will resolve without effect because you can't banish the targets for it. Yeah, maybe I should have cited this in my final in match 5. I'll explain that a little bit later, but yeah, just obviously good card. Throwback to GOAT format, double Noble Mill Crossart. So this you bring in against the decks that set a lot of monsters. So I brought it in against Quick Draw, I brought it in against Flame Veil Synchro, because they get rid of Spy, they don't do anything. Get rid of main set monsters. You also bring this in where you think that they will bring in Snowman Eater against you. Sure, it doesn't banish Snowman Eater, it doesn't banish non-flip monsters, but just this option to just stop that set monster from resolving and not make it come back and not feel Avarice is still relevant. Yeah, it actually did come up for me against Quick Draw where yeah, just late in the game used this because I didn't want to have a tribute on the field or something to yeah, I knew it was a volcanic shell, so yeah. Yeah, just bring it in against the decks that like set. So zombies as well, you can bring this in. Although zombie players are well aware of this card, are completely aware that this exists, just having this in against them means that if they see it, they have to respect that that it exists. But I think that with Shora in your main deck, I think that a lot of these recruiter strategies, Shora just trades nicely with these recruiters, makes up for the fact that yeah, they can bring up whatever they want. Yeah. Next card, Dimensional Prison. Double D Prison. So mirror match comes in a lot of matchups. So one thing I like to do with my side decks is build with a lot of matchups in mind. So Flame Veil Synchro. Anything with recruiters, you banish the recruiter, they can't get it. Mirror match, because in the mirror match you're often only committing one card at a time. So this is a nice card. You just set it. They try to attack into something, attack into your board. You just prison their monster. Just be careful when they're whirlwind up, because obviously prisoning a monster that got advantage is good. But I think that my main deck already covers the mirror match really well. Just obviously side out oppressions. Yeah, just in general, solid spots removal. Just make sure that you're doing it in such a way that you're not committing too much of board. Deck Devastation Virus, probably the card of the weekend. Yeah, it's just Crush Card Virus in a lot of matchups. So obviously Crush Card is 1500 or higher. Deck Devastation Virus is the opposite. You're tributing a bigger monster, kill all the smaller monsters. Yeah, basically 1 mil. So yep, it did actually come up. The 2 games where the 3 games I resolved the Deck Devastation Virus that ended up winning me the game. So yeah, it's very, very powerful. Even if you know your opponent's got a mediocre hand and you use this, just the extra hand knowledge is just too powerful with this. Yeah, just another MVP of the weekend. Actually, it was the MVP of the best card of the weekend. of last week's event. Just being able to no hand knowledge, rip out cards from hand, yeah, just too strong. Double pulling the rug, monarchs, frog hero, yeah, anything that triggers on normal summon. So yeah, negate the activation and effect. So when a monster is normal summoned, you can activate this card, negate the effect and destroy that monster. So yeah, works against Swap Frog if they normal summon Swap Frog. Works against Diva, very flexible all round card. Works against Caius, which is the best tribute monster in the format. Yeah, so anything that a lot of decks run, some combination that pulling the rug gets affected. Elemental Hero Stratos, another monster that gets hit by pulling the rug. So yeah, yeah, just bringing in the matchups where bottomless is bad. Yeah, that's how that normally works. 2 Light Imprisoning Mirror against Lightsworn and against Fairies. Fairies are not a deck that I saw. I did see Lightsworn, but yeah, I think that this is just covers a lot more ground because traditionally, if you're going back to the format, you probably run Skill Drain here. But the problem with Skill Drain is that it doesn't. If your opponent runs Recruiters, the Recruiters get under Skill Drain, and Skill Drain is actually not very good against the matchups where they spit out the big monsters. So sure, you negate the effects, but it's kind of counterproductive against Monarchs because yeah, you have Skill Drain against Monarchs. It doesn't really do much against them in the sense that most of the time they're summoned for free, thanks to Treeborn. They just end up being a big beater. You need Kalut to out them, but the way the Monarch deck is designed anyway, you don't really want to be committing cards to the board. So yeah, that's why I've gone Light Mirror. Yeah, stops Recruiters, stops Shining Angel, stops Nova Summoner. The only things it doesn't stop are cards that activate in the hand, so stuff like Honest, and it doesn't negate continuous effects, so stuff like Thunder King Rao stopping you from searching for your deck. Yeah, just things like that. So yeah, just a card that covers multiple matchups, covers the light focused decks, which I think are a tough matchup because Oppression doesn't really do much against them. And the 15th card in the side is Mind Crush. Yeah, you run a lot of cards. So in fact, it's actually not hard to resolve this card as soon as you become more familiar with the format. Some obviously against Dragon, it's just a card that you combine it with the virus cards. You combine it with Trap Dust Shoot is obviously overpowered there. But even then, you can bring It's a card that I would bring. I didn't see Dragon Turbo, but it's a card that I would bring in against Dragon Turbo because most time they go Trunade before they go for the big push or Heavy Storm or whatever. You flip this and you declare whatever you think is going to make them pop off. So if you think the only card in the hand is Debris Dragon, you flip this with activate Debris Dragon. They have to have Pot of or if you think that Red Eyes Darkness Meta Dragon is a threat, you Mind Crush there. Yeah, they have to have Pot of Avarice. But it's funny, this actually comes up actually a lot of decks. If you think about it, all the top decks always search or have a way you know what's in their hand. So there's not really much downside to using this card in most cases. Yeah, funny. Probably the story of the week of the event that I went to was that I resolved the deck devastation virus, and then Mind Crush the Pot of Avarice, and yeah, it just stops them from going off. So that's the side. For the extra deck, I think, yeah, pretty standard. Catasta, Magical Android. Android is probably the one that you go most off after summoning the value of the Shura. But yeah, Catasta comes up in the matchups where you're facing non-dark monsters. With level 6s, you got 2 Armed Wing, Brionek, Goyo. Goyo never summoned it this weekend, but obviously very strong. Steal monster where you can. Brionek, I think I only brought it out once on this, but when I did, it was a game push. The reason you run to, yeah, Armed Wing, Piercing, or you banish Value Sirocco, summon this 2300 beat stick. Yeah, just the important part with when it does have the effect and it attacks a defense position monster, it becomes 28 during damage step and it pierces. So yeah, in the matchups where piercing is relevant, this and Bora are probably your key cards. So for level 7s, Armor Master, Black Rose, nothing more to say. I did summon up Armor Master, but obviously I knew that if I summoned the Armor Master, it'd probably get hit by Caius anyway. But yeah, it's a funny match when I brought this out. I thought I was going to lose, and then Dark Arm saves me. Black Rose, never summoned the Black Rose, but yeah, always nice to have a board wipe. For the level 8s, I've got Stardust, Colossal Fighter, pretty standard too. Red Dragon Archfiend is not so standard, but it's always nice to be able to, just if you suspect that you're going to face a matchup where you see a lot of defense position monsters, you can just summon this, run over, and it's 3000 and it's dark. So yeah, Dark End. Not obviously around the time a lot of people didn't have it, but with the rule that is given that promo cards are generally accepted nowadays, so yeah, it came up once. I lost that game anyway, but yeah, just nice to have that option to have something that doesn't destroy, so obviously gets one Stardust. And the level 8, the final level 8 is Blackwing Silverwind the Ascendant. You never summon this by its materials with 1 Blackwing Tuner and 2 or more non-tuner monsters. So most of the time you're summoning this. You're summoning this off. If you have Gale, Shora, and trap cards, you can go. Just a quick overview. So you summon out the value with the Shora. You synchro into Armor Master, then you synchro into Stardust, and then you banish the Armor Master, which is your way to banish your Armor Master with the value to summon the Blackwing the Ascendant 2800. I mean, maybe this. I've never actually read all the effects because you never summon it with the method that it says on the card. You can destroy 2. Yeah, you never. So number 1, you never synchro summon this card. So you're always gonna have a battle phase the turn you special summon this card. The second effect might come up if you book a Moonlit. So during each of your opponent's turns, the first Blackwing monster you control that will be destroyed by battle would not be destroyed. So yeah, could come up. So I've run Mistworm. Didn't come up for me, but it's just nice to have the option to go Blizzard, summon Kalut, special summon Bora, synchro to this. Just get rid of their cards, bounce with the cards back. Normally if you end up doing that, that's normally a game push, or it's just momentum. The momentum's in your favor. And the 15th card in the extra deck is the Comatech Fortress Dragon, which obviously goes to the Cyber Dragon. Cyber Dragon plus 1 or more machine monsters. You just use your opponent's monsters, make this fusion material. So that's the deck profile. I thought I wanted to cover just a few aspects of the just some of the matchups you might encounter. So, well, let me just speak about some of the bigger monsters. So, Sirocco, if I just get out the big monsters, Sirocco, Shora, Bora, and the Kalut. So, Kalut, obviously you want to hold on to Kalut as long as you can. But sometimes it comes to a point where you just normal summon it just to get the whirlwind chain going, and in fact, that brings me on to my point of how I like to play with the decks. So, obviously there are hands where you see monster, multiple back row, that's the easy hands, because you don't have to think about them. It's just when you draw the whirlwind, it just adds that level of grind game that makes this deck not just an aggro deck. But so if you draw the whirlwind, whenever I draw the whirlwind, I treat the whirlwind as if it's never going to get destroyed. So if I summon Sirocco with whirlwind and you don't stop me, most of the time I will be trying to get Shora. If I see a burst potential, big push, I'll go for Bora. But most of the time, I feel like you should be searching Shora, continue the whirlwind chain. So So what I mean by continue the whirlwind chain is when you summon Shura, unless you've got a good reason to, unless if you even if you don't have Clute in hand, what I like to do is search Bora, because then I just normal summon Bora the following turn. That gets me my Clute. So the thing is that Shura, probably if you get Clute, your opponent's always going to be after this. And even if you don't search your Clute, your opponent's still going to be not want make sure that this doesn't resolve. But I just like the idea that that even to some extent, I will normal summon Colute to get myself Gale, or Blizzard, and then obviously Blizzard gets value. So that's self-explanatory. But just the way I like to play with the deck is that I treat my Whirlwind Searchers as if Whirlwind's never going to get destroyed, because your opponent has to have heavy storm. But okay, there's a lot of disruption out there if you think about it, but people aren't really running Book of Moon as much, which means, but they are replacing it with the Wing Blast. So yeah, it's just I think that just being able to continue the Whirlwind chain is actually quite important. Sirocco is a win condition. Well, is a really important card in the mirror match. Make sure that you're holding on to your Siroccos as long as possible, because yeah, it is the way you push for damage. Mirror match is, I think, an easy one, but because of the way I built it, I feel really confident in the mirror match. I think that I know how to navigate my way around. Mirror match is not really that hard. You just need to obviously stop them from resolving Whirlwind and clear and play around the Icarus attack, and you do this really well with, say, a Dust Tornado, or post-siding you're siding in Dimensional Prison. You just make sure you don't commit multiple back row in the mirror match unless you're in a really dominating position. Yeah, Sirocco is probably the most important Blackwing in the mirror match. Don't just summon it loosely. I really do like. People will say that Bora is not a good Blackwing monster. I'm inclined to disagree. In some matchups, it just ends up being, if you don't manage to summon Armed Wing with Piercing, then this is the next best thing. Yep, and yeah, it just allows you to, if you summon this with Sirocco, that's already 37 on board. So if your opponent's already so low on life, then you just go Sirocco, Bora, Pierce, combine it with Colute, Gale. Normally that's really good. Yeah, this comes up a lot in the matchups where they run small monsters. So if your opponent for some reason leaves Treeborn out, you just summon this attack, or they summon the tokens of Dandelion. They've got 0, so you're attacking for 17. Or you just pierce in general. Yeah, I think that Bora needs a lot more credit than people would think. It not only does it serve as the burst potential, but it just serves to bait out a lot of back row. Because at the end of the day, if Shaw gets eaten up by a back row, then Bora's not a very good card. Like the whole reason, Bora's just there to, well, yeah, just bait out a lot of stuff. So what I noticed. What I noticed was that Deck Devastation Virus is obviously overpowered. It's just one of those, just the hand knowledge aspect is too strong. So one thing I did really clever was, the games I resolved this in, I normally won that match, well, that particular game, and ended up winning the match overall. So, just quick rundown of my matchups. Game 1 was against Quick Draw. Match 1 was against Quick Draw. Really nice opponent. Well, actually, all my opponents were really nice. Just nice to go to an event where everyone's just really nice and just really chill, and yeah, just so. As I say, Deck Devastation Virus was probably the cards of the day. Game 1 against Quick Draw was a really long game. Actually, took half an hour to grind out, and this is what I was talking about in terms of the. In fact, probably I think I remember this really clearly, that I just went draw 6 in hand, pass turn, and luckily you don't get you're fortunate that you're in a format where there's not a lot of decks that actually punish you for passing turn, and there's nothing wrong with passing turn if you don't know what you're up against. And yeah, eventually I managed to navigate my way around, grind my way down. I ended up winning that game thanks to a really convoluted play. So I went. I ended up having Kalut and Vayu on the field with Sirocco and Grave, and I joined to Blizzard. With level 4, I'll go to Bora. Yeah, and that's funny enough. Giant Trinity actually came up there to clear a lone set back row and turn off my oppression. But yeah, that's a very niche application of Trunade. But anyway, I ended up going Brionek, pitch oppression, bounce back my value, discard the value, add back the Kalut to my hand, banish the value and Sirocco for Armed Wing, attack with Armed Wing, drop Kalut. That played around Gauze because my opponent's on 3000. So yeah, I know that I just respected Gauze and played around Gauze that way. Game 2, I got Dust Shoot. I basically bricked on Dust. Dust Shoot revealed that I had Solemn, double Sirocco, double Bora, and Value. I almost got my way out of that because I realized that Bora is a win condition against Quick Draw because you want to deal as much piercing damage, but unfortunately I just drew too many monsters in the end of the day, but I almost got my way out of that one. In the third game, I think I resolved Deck Devastation Virus in that match, and then just my opponents didn't take the chance of playing Heavy Storm earlier, so I resolved the Deck Devastation Virus, and time was called, but he scooped because he realized that I was going to win because I resolved Whirlwind multiple times. That I resolved Whirlwind a couple of times. So my rule of thumb with Whirlwind is that if I can resolve Whirlwind twice, I'm in a really, really good spot. Because resolving 1 is obviously good. Resolving 2, really good. Anything more than 2, you run away with those games because what ends up happening is you just end up having too many resources for your opponent to deal with. So I think that's just a common theme with Blackwings in general, is that if you play it just as an aggro deck, I think you're missing out on a lot of the strengths of the deck, which is taking advantage. There's 3 main cards that make you want to pick up pure Blackwings. So the 3 cards are Black Whirlwind, Icarus Attack, and Royal Oppression. And the fact that you can play all 3 of them in the same deck is really, really strong. So yeah. Game 2 is funny because I actually played this person at Goat Nationals and they were playing with Empty Jar. So yeah, game 1, this is the one where I'm talking about where I've dropped the Armor Master. So I just from memory, I managed to drop Armor Master. Armor Master gets banished by Caius, and then I go Desperation, flop Dark Armed, and they can't out the Dark Armed. Game 2, I keep in Icarus attacks, but I don't even see them, and yeah, I think I used my cards too early. In fact, Mind Crush was actually quite important because they used Swap Frog. I thought if I'm going to decode the Treeborn that they sent on the Swap Frog, let me at least get rid of Swap Frog, but in hindsight, it'd probably be good to have called the Miracle Fusion, but it's one of those things where if you don't have perfect knowledge of the hand, the Mind Crush is a little bit weaker, but you can see that I was already making some educated guesses with the Mind Crush. It was either between Swap Frog or Miracle Fusion that unfortunately I went with the wrong decision in the end of the day. So I lost that game because I got wrecked. Game 3, I decided I'm going to side all my Icarus attacks. Yeah, and turn 1 I resolve Dust Shoot, which allows me to play around the Mirror Force and the Bottomless, so I keep poking with the Bora. This is where I'm talking about Bora being quite good, because what Bora does is it basically allows you to stall out the game, and then, yeah, just eventually I get to a point where I resolve Deck Devastation Virus, and that's basically curtains. I knew that there was a double Malicious in hand, but just resolving Deck Devastation Virus is just game over. Just allowed me to just know what to play like I already knew that I was having to play around Heavy Storm, I think, at one point. But yeah, it's just too strong. So yeah, I won that match. Third match was against Morphtronics. So basically, you go cell phone machine duplication. Yeah. In fact, I believe I misplayed in that match as well, because what I did was I set Icarus Attack and Mirror Force, and I kept Dust Tornado in my hand, and that deck, the deck that my opponent was running, there was basically no back row. So I lost that game. Then game 2, I resolved Deck Devastation Virus and rip out everything in hand and leave just Junk Box and Pot of Avarice. Yeah, that was just too good. Very, very strong. And then I see they draw, which is actually a monster that fuels Avarice. So I go Mind Crush, Pot of Avarice, that basically seals the deal. Game 3, my opponent opens level limit area beast on Judgment. I top deck into Heavy Storm, they don't negate it. And yeah, I just do what Blackwings do best, which is picking apart those weakened boards. Yeah, just completely run away with the game. Yeah, Cyber Dragon was actually a card that if I drew into it, it would be really good. But yeah, just managed to pick my way through all those all the monsters, which are weenie monsters. So yeah, without level limit, I can attack, and Deck Devastation Virus just finishes off opponents. Match 4 was against Flameveil Synchro. So yeah, I think I actually missed. That was a game that I definitely misplayed in quite badly, because I wasn't expecting the Sorcerer, and I thought, okay, it's fine. But what I didn't realize was that the Sorcerer hanging around didn't help, because I had a hand with double Sirocco and Kalut, so I should have played Solemn on the Chaos Sorcerer, and then yeah, just run over the Stardust on the following turn, and yeah, I probably should have won that. I think that was also the game I Desperation flopped Dark Armed and almost won with that. Yeah, no, that was game 3. But yeah, game 2, I do the same trick of Icarus Attack during end phase, blow away back row, and just run away with it, because without any back row, yeah, just decks can't cope with you. Game 3, I don't think there was too much I could have done. I set Book of Moon and Bottomless, and they get hit by MST and Dust Tornado. I think maybe I should have. I remember this actually now, because I had Sirocco Bora, so I was in 2 frames of mind. I was like, should I go Sirocco Bora, Pump Bora, run over set monster, risk losing to Mirror Force, or do I just play a low commitment game? If my opponent's got Raikou, then if I attack into Shura, so if I attack with Bora into the Raikou, it's low commitment. But unfortunately, it turns out that my opponent set the Spy. So yeah, not really too much I could have done in that particular game, outside of making a better decision of just going out and just praying to God that there was no back row anti-attack trigger. So yeah, that was a little bit unfortunate. And then the final match was against Diva Hero Vayu Turbo. Yeah, that deck is actually quite scary when it gets going. Just get lots of options. You eventually, yeah, when the deck doesn't brick, then the deck just ends up having a lot of late game cards. Vayu and Miracle Fusion, and then Synchros. Yeah, just that deck is probably one that maybe I should consider, but yeah, just a while. Brickhands, double Miracle Fusion from what I remember seeing on the list. Yeah, game 1, I think I opened pretty strong. I opened Dust Shoot, Whirlwind, but I think my mistake was actually setting Dust Tornado alongside the Whirlwind, because my opponent has heavy Dust Shoot. Yep, and unfortunately, because of that, I can't really play around the Dust Shoot, because I end up having 3 cards in hand. Yeah, and then that game went downhill, because I had to play around the Book of Moon and the I had to play around Book of Moon, so forever I was just poking the ball, hoping that a Book of Moon would resolve, but my opponent held on to the book really well, and I eventually get outgrinded, and in game 2, I get hit with, I think I get hit by Dust Root again, and my opponent knows that I got Torrential, so he's playing around Torrential the whole game, which I don't think there's too much I could have done here. He's like, oh, there's too many back row, and then I was like, yeah, but I don't have. That was actually the match where I opened double Blizzard and Gale. So yeah, that was a bit unfortunate. I think one of my opponents dropped after top cut, so that was a bit unfortunate for my tiebreakers. So yeah, I just missed out on top 8 because Connor was there, and he got top 8 with a 3-2 record as well with his Light Swan deck. So yeah, it was really good, really nice. Yeah, few plus points with that event. Obviously, my friend Miles he's familiar with Brotherhood games, so yeah, it's good to see him top with cross between Vayu, Turbo, and Blackwings that everyone seems to have jumped on the train onto. And then AJ Hussein, who everyone knows from playing GOAT formats, one of the stronger Chaos Control players. Sorry, Chaos Turbo players. He ended up playing zombies, and he actually managed to come in 10th place behind me after losing the first 2 matches. So yeah, that was pretty good on his part. Yeah, really good event. Hopefully it's given a little bit of insight on how I play with Blackwings. If you have any questions, feel free to pop them in the comments. Yeah, see you next time. Bye for now.